There's a lot. So it's such an important conversation around really what you oversee at Defense as CISO when it comes to really the truth of what is happening, what is important. The SEC is just coming out with some very important but also very basic things yesterday on X around guidance, around custody and security. And I think the conversation and product and business you guys have been building for years, and the value and priority you have around some of these topics is finally coming into the spotlight. So we're really excited to have you on and maybe myth bust a little bit. Maybe as we kick off, give the audience a quick overview of your role at the firm and really when you think about CISO, what that looks like day to day at Defense.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, so I'm trying to help the company build a product that is like as secure as possible. And this is a scope that you need to build like brick by brick. And it's not only like linked to just the applications that you are developing. Who is developing this application, how this is being deployed, how this is run, what is the governance that you have, who is responsible for what. And so defining all of this space and build like this like a framework and security program to make sure that you don't miss anything and you try to like monitor and prevent any threats that can happen to your system. So yeah, that's basically my role. As I used to say, security is interesting because nobody hears about security, but when there is something that goes wrong. This is what I'm telling my team. Nobody is gonna ask you something unless there is something that goes wrong, right? That's not totally true because the team at Defense are very well aware of the like security implication of what we are building, and so they always come to us for like advice and making sure we build something. But that's the idea.
When we talk about security, and I think especially when consumers hear about wallets, they think about their MetaMask wallet, their Phantom wallet, and probably one of the first security relevant phrases they're going to get thrown is not your keys, not your crypto. But it's also probably, I know for me, when I was getting into the space, probably when I was taking custody of my wallet, that was a scary moment. I don't want to lose this seed phrase. I'm going to lose all my money. You hear the stories of people losing their keys to their Bitcoin, wallet that's in the landfill now. What is correct maybe about that statement? And is there anything about that statement though that from your perspective you kind of want to pull back on and then you would
Yeah,
maybe
so
dispel?
this statement is nice, right? It's a nice statement that comes from cyberpunk era, and everybody like embrace it at the time. The issue is like the implementation that's been done to like try to stick to this mantra as much as possible, right? So the very, as you said, what that means is that the very basic way to implement that, it's to say, I have a piece of paper, I'm just gonna write my private key to this piece of paper, and only me is gonna have access to this piece of paper. And so each time I need to sign a transaction, I can do it using the secret word on my paper. So that's great, but then optionally, this is impossible. This is not sustainable. We've seen like a house on fire, wherever you backed up your seed phrase, this part is gone. We've seen like people getting very scared and some like attacks, like physical attacks on people to like try to get access to their seed phrase. So all of this implementation, starting from this mantra, we got this basic implementation and basic way of saying, okay, everybody can manage its own like basically token, so its own money. Created a lot of issues that resulted in, I think it's more like 20% of all Bitcoin circulation has been lost, and not because of like DPRK, North Korean hacker, or like a lot of big hacks, but just because they lost their keys. And so that's a real problem. That's like a disaster. You have 25 million Bitcoin in circulation. 20% of them are lost. They lost all of their like life-saving money. This is a real disaster. So by starting with like a very simple and interesting idea, the implementation got into the way, and we realized that now that's not something that is that easy to do.
So when institutions are approaching defense and they're engaging in this institutional wallet conversation, I assume that most of these people may start as consumers with this understanding of the not your keys, not your crypto, with this notion that self custody is king. What does the conversation look like to dispel some of those myths and to start helping them think about wallet security in the correct way? I don't know, maybe did this happen with IBM and Digital Asset Haven? Or what does that educational cycle look like for wallet security in general?
I would say when we talk with like big financial institutions, big banks, IBM as well, they are pretty aware of what that means to handle billions of dollars for their customer and the risk associated with it. Right? They have an existing framework in place on compliance for like all of their like today's assets. And what they want is to make sure that by getting exposed to digital assets, they don't have to change all of their framework and their compliance, and they can find something that is similar for the digital asset space. And so that's what's interesting, and where you can see actually the shift is coming for 1 year now, even like a bit more than that. But we all started with, as a consumer, as you said, with like hardware wallets and putting half of your like maybe key share in the phone or this kind of like using consumer device, but that's not something that works with like all the financial institutions who know how to like secure billions of dollars for their customer. You can't tell them you're going to have half of your critical secret in a phone or in an hardware wallet. They're asking for more, and this is exactly the discussion that we have with them, and that's why we try to position ourselves in a like different way by decoupling how do you access a platform from the critical secrets that you need to secure, which are the digital asset keys. Now, we do have a lot of conversation with like maybe more Web3 native companies who are really in this like belief of like not your key, not your cryptos. And so there is actually, that's where you have more education to do, where when you say not your key, not your cryptos, we mentioned that we all agree this is nice, but as soon as you start to put your private key in any like technical provider, you start to work with any technical provider. So even with an hardware wallet company, you have an implicit trust in this hardware wallet company, right? How do you know that the firmware that is running on your hardware wallet doesn't have any malicious access? How do you know that as soon as you're going to upgrade your firmware to have access to more staking or more advanced functionality, you're not going to get a backdoor on your hardware wallet? So this is where there is a bit of education, in my opinion. And whenever we start to say that, people are like, oh yeah, that's true. I guess I need to trust this company, even though I thought I had my hardware wallet and I was the only one who controlled it.
So when we were talking about this conversation a little bit earlier, there was one thing that stood out. You said smart contracts remove the need for custody. What do you mean by that exactly? And maybe what are the implications to that for financial institutions?
So we've seen a lot of discussion around you can manage all your assets using some smart contracts and implement maybe multi-sig and try to implement all of your logic inside the smart contract. And because the smart contract is code that is on chain, you have this belief that the blockchain brings all the security. And so you don't need advanced security. You don't need like some advanced monitoring and all of that. It all goes back always to the same thing. It's not because you have component that is secure that the access to this component is secure, right? It's not because you put all of your like money in a vault that is very secure, but that access to the vault is secure, and that if you don't keep the key to access the vault in like operational secure way, that you can say that your money is secure. And so that's the same here is who has access to this smart contract, how this smart contract can be updated, upgraded, what is the logic, how do you make sure that all the logic that you put in your smart contract is cannot be tampered with and can evolve with all your needs. So each time you need to add a new person to your multisig, what do you do? How do you sign that? Who has access to the secret that can update those parts? So those are a lot of like governance discussion that are very important to take into consideration. And even if the code run in a blockchain with a secure consensus protocol, that doesn't mean that your assets are secure.
How is AI impacting this conversation? I think we just saw the other day lending protocol on Base, Moonwell. Was I think it was like a $1.8 million exploit that they sourced back to an AI vibe coding error. How should firms be thinking about vibe coding? I know this is a little bit of a curveball, but yeah, how do you even think about approaching this conversation? Because it's only going to increase, right? I mean, I think about the amount of AI that we use in our systems to build this studio even.
Yeah, that's a great question. Us as like security engineer, we are kind of in the crossfire here, right? Because you asked me, should I let a robot code, like put some code in my application? A year ago, I would have told you, no way, it's like impossible. It's not secure. How can you trust this thing, right? It's like fundamentally, it goes against a lot of the principles that you have in security, where you always want to check to make sure that the logic is all right and that people they did a good design decision, and then they move into the code and they implemented that in a secure way. Now, for sure, AI is adding a lot of velocity, and in an industry that's moving very fast, like all of the company are like embracing it, and so you always need to find the right middle ground with that. And that's always the thing with security. If you want a secure system, you just unplug everything. You have a system that's not connected to anything that nobody can access. It's secure, but it is useless. So you still want to create this like usable ecosystem that people can strive into and create things while still being secure. So yeah, vibe coding, I think it's always important to like review the code and not getting into this maybe laziness. I would say of saying, oh yeah, for like the last 100 times I did a commit, everything was clear, everything was secure, everything looked great because I reviewed it. So the 100, the like now, this just one time, I'm just gonna not review it because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be, I can trust it. So like never trust, basically never trust anybody, right? You always need to like review some code. And this code has been written by a human or by AI. You always need to like question what's been done and make sure that another pair of eyes are looking at it.
This might be a bit of an out there question, but as a security company, you want everybody that uses you to trust you innately. But you also said to not trust everybody. What does trust mean to you? How does trust get built as essentially a security partner with these institutions?
So you said we want everybody to trust us. What I'm gonna tell you is that I don't want anybody to trust us. I want people, our customer and the compliance and the security people and the firms that are using us to be able to use our products without having to trust us, right? This like paradigm that's been like famously pushed by Apple, saying it's the FBI, if the FBI comes to us and asks to read the message, we can't provide this content because we don't have the ability to do it because it's all encrypted end to end. And so this is what we want to enable with our solution. We want to say to the companies, we have our product. You can run our product. This product can be run on your infrastructure, or you can also use our infrastructure. But at the end of the day, we're going to offer you the ability to validate every interaction and validate all the integrity of the system so that if we go rogue, if we are hacked and there is some malicious people inside your system, you're not going to be impacted. So yeah, I would say what we are building now, when a company comes to us and say, we cannot trust you, but we're going to use your product, this is always a good victory for us.
Anything else, when we think about these myths or expressions in this space that, or maybe anything that's particularly relevant that you've seen lately that you maybe want to dispel when it comes to wallet security?
So I think there are we are seeing a lot of discussion in the space lately around like regulation, and with regulation comes some discussion around like cold storage, right? So you have the regulator that says to the financial institution, you need to keep in like a cold storage solution. So what is cold storage is basically you have various implementation of the term, and people all around the world, regulators, they have also various understanding of it. But you could say, I'm just going to put my private keys in a disconnected computer or in an HSM that is connected to a disconnected computer. And because there is this air gap between the connected world and the part that is disconnected, everything is going to be secure, right? And because the regulators, they ask for it, we've seen some people implementing some solution just to say that they have a disconnected solution, but not really thinking more about that. And so here, what is important to understand is when you do that, you may create a solution that is even less secure than like a fully connected system. Because if you just put a small HSM on a computer in the locker of your desk, and anybody can come in and just talk with your HSM and start to sign transaction, this is actually a very, very unsecure setup. It's again, we're going back to the governance, and it's not because you have a system that feels secure that access to this system is secure. So this is very important to see that a bit more like globally as a full system and say, how do I enable like integrity and end-to-end security by the time where I want to pass an order. So we call that an intent. I want to say, I want to transfer 1 Bitcoin from this wallet to that wallet. From this moment to the moment where it goes to the HSM or to the MPC, and this is actually being signed and broadcasted to the blockchain, you have an end-to-end trust and integrity that you can put in place to make sure that nothing in between can change that. So if you do that, you can tell anybody, you can go see a man on the street and say, go plug this USB key to my HSM to sign it, and this person won't be able to do anything with it because you have a good integrity check right at the end of the process. Does that make sense?
Following you a little bit, there was a few things at the end that I think we're getting above my pay grade here, but this is, I think, part of the reason. This is why Drew and I wanted to do the show. I think we made a comment last week when we had some of our first guests on that we were excited to do this to not only obviously bring these insights to our community, but also to accelerate our learning to dive deeper into these new stories and context that you see all over crypto Twitter and LinkedIn. So I do think we have our next guest, Nick, in the green room here. Anything else to leave a listener here that may be thinking deeply about their wallet security right now? Any final thoughts you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I would say there is no reason why a Web3 stack cannot integrate well with like some existing framework. And so whenever you want to get exposed to digital assets, you don't need to like as a financial institution, you shouldn't need to be afraid to try to reinvent the wheel and try to have your compliance team agreeing to something that's not something that they know. You can definitely go to a technical provider and ask for everything that you used to ask for like other assets. What is my disaster recovery strategy? What if you disappear in an instant? How can I recover my assets? What are all of your certification? How do you handle your governance? Can I deploy everything on my data center? All of that is something that is possible. There is no reason why it's not possible. And what we mentioned during this past 30 minutes saying, I'm just going to give you 1 key share, put that in your phone and you're going to be secure. This is actually not true and doesn't fit any compliance model. So don't be afraid to ask for that. You have people in the space that are building it like this. We've been talking with hundreds of institutions. We know their requirement, and it's definitely possible to build something that can be like accepted and stick to their like risk framework.
Well, I wanted to ask this a little selfishly before we let you go. Just your background in the French military and Google and security. I know we didn't have a ton of time to get into any of that, but what would you say, just the journey that you're on and learning so much about this space and how security can apply in all these different contexts, whether it be government, fintech, just there's so many different use cases. What would you say, but maybe more in the French military? I'm just curious, like any key takeaways or key learnings that in that context you picked up in a role like that. I don't know how long you were working in that environment or what role that played in the security journey, but I just had to ask. It's such a unique point in the journey for you.
Yeah, with security, it always comes down to the same thing: is you have a software, you have a system in front of you. Either you're on one side, so you're testing the security of the system, or you're on the other side, you are securing, you are trying to secure the system. It's always the same question: is how can I find a way to bypass all the logic of the system to then do something that shouldn't be allowed to do, right? And those are like, they can happen in always, even like in real life. If we have like 1 minute, I have a small anecdote, but like 3 years ago, I was like, wanted to visit like a famous church in Venice, I think. And you had this very long line in front of the church. And so I just go in front and I see that some people with bags, they are sent away to another small location to like put their bag there. And then they get a ticket and they can go back and like bypass all the line, right? And so what I did, I had a bag. I just went there, got my ticket, put my bag, and bypassed the line enter the church, right? So this is, with security in like cyberspace, is the same thing. Is how do you try to find those like bypass to be able to access some like unwanted feature of the system? And in the French military of defense, it was the same thing. It's just that instead of doing that with only the cyberspace, you have some like military. So you have also people that are on the ground and that needs to take some decisions that rely on how you do things digitally. And so I would say the pressure and the processes are much higher. And so if you ask me what did I learn back then that now I like and I build on, is sometimes whenever we have a small security incident or we have some small monitoring and we have people that are stressed, for me, when you lived in a time where you had like militaries that were like really timely depending on your action and take some decision, now it feels like pretty easy things to handle. So working under stress and just stay calm, understand what's going on, and make sure that you have all the signals that you need to have to make sure that your system is secure is something that I learned over the years. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Thibault, thank you so much for joining us. This was really great. There's so much more to dive into. I think what we'll try to do is get maybe these types of conversations on the end of the show.
We don't have a hard stop.